It's simple, guys, girls, ladies, gentlemen, dogs. It is that simple. If you believe, you can achieve. I think I just made up a new thing. I love that about myself. Okay. So we're talking about the book, Divine Audacity, the 12 powers that Charles Fillmore was able to identify. Charles Fillmore, our Unity founder, who was married to a sassy redhead, whose name was Myrtle, and Myrtle was the one that founded Unity based on healing, going within, recognizing the 12 centers in her body when she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. And she was like, I am not dying from that. I'm not doing it. I know my aunt, my grandma, everybody else. And she was so moved by E.B. Weeks. They took a ride from, back in the day, it was a ride, from Kansas City to Chicago. E.B. Weeks was a huge metaphysician at the time. And he said, you are a perfect child of God. You do not inherit disease. Dis-ease, hyphen on purpose. So whatever the doctor tells you your diagnosis is, we remember who is the prognosis? God. That takes then the power away from anybody telling you. Who doesn't like to be bossed around? Right? I don't want someone telling me what it is. So, and that's because I'm a fifth child of 11. So you can imagine I had to have a strong voice. So the powers within us allow us then to take the information we receive and then figure out how does it apply to us. Then what powers within us do I have to call forth so that I can then say, oh, this is how I'm going to deal with what I've heard. Right? So we can respond or react. We get to choose. Is life hard? It can be, right? And does it have to suck? No. I just said that word from the platform. You can, because we give energy to words as well, right? And I also know, as I can hear my grandmother telling me, you're so bold, Therese Ann, because when you're raised Catholic, you have two names, right? So are you willing to be bold and audacious? The answer has to be yes, and do it on your own time, okay? But this is what the 12 powers allow us to understand. Fundamental, that's the only time you'll ever hear us in Unity use that word, because they are instinctive in us. We inherit them when we're born. They come in as OEM parts of us, not something we have to add on afterwards. 12 powers, 12 lights, 12 freedoms, 12 audacities, 12 faculties of mind, 12 fountainheads, Fillmore used to call them. And imagine as a fountain would have been used to be the picture of all the different sprays that come out. And they're beautiful, aren't they? And each one is different depending upon how the light hits it. So what Linda Martellowitz said, who's the head of all of prayer for us at Unity, although she would never admit it, she's like, I'm just somebody else like y'all. I'm like, no, you're not. You're bigger than all of us, because this is how she lives her life. And she inspires us to say, oh, let me go from my sense consciousness, which is that of all of this, to the transformation of prayer and time apart from the busyness to the higher consciousness that we call the Christ consciousness. Christ was not Jesus's last name. It was his job description. Everybody breathe. You're not hearing that anywhere else on Sunday morning, right? So if that's the job description, what does it mean for us? To get out of our little small s selves, which Maggie talks about here and has, I learned it from her, get rid of all that ego stuff and step into your divinity. The song said, we are unstoppable. Everything is possible. Well, then why isn't it in our lives? Because we think with our small m mind and get ourselves all full up with stuff that doesn't serve us. So we remember the song. I hope you took notes, right? I'm a big note taker. So I wrote down unstoppable and everything is possible. So I write these kinds of things down to remind myself, because sometimes we forget, right? Life intervenes and then you're like, ugh, what am I supposed to think? Well, we're unstoppable and everything is possible. So we move from our intellect into our heart space, physically, the longest 18 or 20 inches in our lives, depending upon your own anatomy. When we can then, and always blend them, it's always a both and, intellect and heart. Today we're going to talk about zeal. The only way, I told the prayer chaplains earlier when we met, that I was able to be ordained, and someone gave me the heads up, thank God. It was Paul Hasselbeck, actually, who teaches metaphysics. He said, Therese, you're never going to make it through the program if you don't tell them that you know, and even if you're just giving it lip service right now, that you have to temper your zeal with wisdom. Because this is me without caffeine. Right? This was me at 9 o'clock when I met with Pat, yeah, because this is me. So how do you know that sometime you're too much? Well, usually it's people's faces like, or something like that. So I'm pretty attuned to all of that all these years later. But I still want my Christ to be contagious. I still want my enthusiasm to be something that you might want more of in your own way, of course, because we all show up uniquely, unrepeatable expressions of God. So far you've covered faith, which is the perception, conviction, and expectancy attributes. You have also covered the light of understanding, comprehension, realization, and insight. And then today we're going to talk about zeal. You also did imagination, right? Right? So conception, vision, and embodiment. The best thing about imagination is worry is the greatest misuse of it. So when we worry, we're imagining and we're making stuff up, and it's the worst application of that. So scripture for today is from Psalm 16, verse 11. In thy presence is the fullness of joy. So turn to your neighbor and say, I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Turn to somebody else, turn around. Say it to yourself. I am so glad I am here. And all of those online, wherever you are, whatever time you're watching us, we get to remember that we are the ones that have the control of our thoughts to then decide how your day is going to be. Don't turn on the news. Don't see what the forecast is. Say, I'm going to have a great day today, and then make it so. I remember learning that as my dad he wasn't a unity person, but he had this because he was a coach. And so he would always tell us that. And I kept thinking, whatever, Dad, whatever. And that wasn't even a word back in my day, right? But can we remember that we're the ones in charge of how it is we either respond or react to whatever is happening? My invitation is always turn off the news and take a walk. See where the miracles are not. Because they're everywhere, always and in always. So the affirmation that I have, I'll say it first in parts and then you'll say it with me, please. Today I affirm my zeal allows for all the amazing blessings now on their way to me. So we'll say it together. Today I affirm my zeal allows for all the amazing blessings now on their way to me. You have to declare it now so that all the stuff gets out of the way and they have room to make their way to you. We say blessings because sometimes it feels like we're in school or life is giving us yet another lesson. But if we can shift the stuff inside of us, careful how you hear that, we can have everything be a blessing. Everything for us, which means we've taken a moment to realize all of that. C.S. Lewis says, joy is the serious business of heaven. Where is heaven? If you forget, open your shirt. Hello, God. Right? And that's what they're teaching the kids back in the youth. Because as close as our breath is where the Spirit of the Holy, which is Holy Spirit, the Spirit of our holiness, lies. We always think it's something outside. As a little girl, I learned about a guy on a cloud that looked kind of like me, except for no freckles, which is like so historically wrong, right? So get back to the truth, and it's not about something outside of us or a face or an image, with no disrespect or irreverence, although I am. It's in us, always and in all ways. Charles Fillmore, at the age of 94, said, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm, and I spring forth to do with a mighty faith the things that ought to be done by me. So we know we are doing things, we know we are being things. Faith is always behind that, right? We use zeal also to open the door for the things that is ours to do. Enthusiasm, the word enthu means of God. So I'm not going to tell you, nobody in Unity will tell you what to think. We're going to ask you to think and then rethink what it is that you thought, that you thought, that you thought, that you thought. It makes me slow down, right? So we've heard that it is a journey rather than a destination, right? So make it joyous while you're here. I said last time, buy the flowers today, send the card today, and get those cards and flowers and chocolate for yourself as well. If you wait for someone else, you might starve. Seriously, or they bring you the wrong kind of chocolate. Ew, right? So get the kind you want, celebrate yourself. So there's a story about a guy who was driving home from work one day, and he stopped to see a Little League game, right? So he gets out of the car and he walks over and sits on the bench at the first baseline. And he leans over and asks one of the little boys, because it was a boys' game. Now there's girls' games too, but back in the day, there was only boys. What's the score? And the little boy says, we are behind 14-0, with great enthusiasm and excitement. And the man said, really? Well, you don't look very discouraged. And the little boy says, why would I be discouraged? We haven't even been up to bat yet. The hope of glory, right? Can you get yourself to be more childlike, not childish, childlike, to see the amazement, to be excited when you see a rainbow or a cardinal or whatever it is? I find dimes and nickels. I'm like, woo! People are like, you would have thought that was $1. I'm like, no, it's a dime. It means a lot to me. What means a lot to you? What will bring joy to your life and your face and your actions in the midst of something like the news, right? I don't have a TV on purpose because I don't really want to watch all that anymore. And then I, have news sources to find out, because, that's my job also, to know what's going on. Eric Butterworth, Unity minister in New York, really, wrote the book, Discover the Power Within, and so many others. Was such a great teacher for us, continues to be a great teacher. And he said, as you see it, so is not the right way, because we see like, oh, there it is, instead of seeing it right. So I pull up to a red light and I'm thinking, I'm seeing this green. I'm seeing it green. When I'm driving in the rain, the 5 hours to get here, because I love you, I'm thinking, I'm seeing sunshine. Now people in the cars next to me might think, oh, she's a little cuckoo because she's talking to herself, and it's true. Because I work alone, I have a staff meeting and it's me, so I talk out loud. Don't ever interrupt, right? So can you see it rightly versus seeing it like, ugh, here we go again. Here we go again. We get to live in the now moment. That's all we have. It's all that's ever promised. So be present to what is happening in these moments, to see the miracles, to understand that the commitment is from within you to be 100% now, to be 100% responsible for your commitment to healing thoughts of negativity. We're in Lent. Let's eliminate negative thinking, L-E-N-T. I didn't make it up, but I own it. right? So, and we renew, and we release, and we fast, and we feast. It depends, and all in honor of the day, which is called Easter in the world of religion, where in unity we celebrate the consciousness of Christ yet again rising above all of the stuff. The stuff is the Easter story, which is a fabulous story. You want to come the Wednesday of Easter week, that's the day before Maundy Thursday, and 4 days before Easter Sunday, to come to the Taizé service that Maggie and the prayer chaplains and y'all are putting on, because it will help another shift in your life of what it is. The crucifixion, which everybody's like, oh, I don't want to talk about him dying. I don't either. The cross means crossing out error thinking. It had nothing to really do with Jesus per se. It's just the way they killed people back in the day. So you'll see my little cross, my unity wings somewhere in here, they're the wings, and it's more like a plus sign, right? Because we have always the ability to take ourselves horizontally, as we are right now together, and raise up to our consciousness. You'll never look at a cross the same way again, right? So here we are having our daily, la, 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 la. Oh, wait a minute, time to rise again, time to rise again. That's what we metaphysically interpret that symbology to mean. So our direct energies and ideas within our minds are made realized when we add in our zeal. We add in that component of zeal. And remember, always tempering it with wisdom so that we can see that I think it's Fillmore who says, zeal is the mighty force that incites the winds, the tides, the storms. I mean, imagine. It's a fabulous way to look at a storm that's coming at us. It urges the planet on its course and spurs the ant to greater exertion. Have you ever watched an ant carried like what? You can't even see what it is. It's so minuscule, but he's working really hard, and then all the ants follow behind him because, of course, they want a piece of what he has, right? So zeal is the urge behind all things, the affirmative impulse of existence, the inward fire of the soul. Regardless of the intellectual mind, Fillmore says, that always is cautioning us, like, oh, I don't know, that's not how a minister behaves, Therese. I'm all about that. Because someone says to me, you don't really look like a minister. I'm like, I looked up in the dictionary, I didn't see a picture. Right? So quit making stuff up about people and what we're supposed to look like. My greatest compliment, always in South Carolina, because that's where I serve, is, wait a minute, but you're a woman. I'm like, thanks for noticing. Seriously? Out of the mouth of well-educated people in the 21st century? Just saying. Oh, I call them to task. Like, what? People forget that the only way Jesus was really able to do his ministry was because, and there's no slight, we have to have the masculine and feminine balance within us. So he had women and men in his circle of disciples. It was just that some of the females, all of the females, let's be honest, were written out, right? So there's a great thing, maybe Maggie and I will teach it one day here. We have the 12 disciples and we have the 12 women of the chalice. I didn't write it. A woman named, a very audacious woman, Letty Hammock wrote it, because we have to be balanced always and in all ways, heart and head, both and, to go forward into life. So we know that sometimes our energy, my energy, can be frenetic. Then that's not so pretty in the example of zeal. So that's why we use and bring in our wisdom. Somewhere in Scripture, because I didn't quote where it was, God is spirit. We celebrate in spirit and in truth. So what I don't always understand as a loud person, as a middle child, like why you're supposed to be quiet in church. I never understood that. It's holy. Well, what's holy? Because all of our ancestors always danced and sang, didn't they? And have festivities and drink wine, and if that's if that's in your purview, or whatever, cider, and celebrate always the community of communion with another. So that's really what they're talking about. Eric Butterworth says, zeal used from the elevated consciousness is the ability to be enthusiastic and passionate, as well as to start to motivate ourselves based on divine ideas, truths, and principles. We use zeal to motivate ourselves to be passionate about being the best Christ consciousness we can be. Christ sometimes offends people, then I'll say love. Use love. God and love are interchangeable. Christ and love are interchangeable. When you get hooked up on a word that's like bugging you, figure out why, unpack it, and use a different word instead. The main thing is consciousness, the awareness of the allness around us going forward. So another affirmation I have is zeal is the ability to be enthusiastic and passionate as I motivate myself.